Welcome to the How to Succeed podcast, the show that helps you get to the top and stay there. This is how to succeed at reading other people. The following podcast is copyrighted by Sandler Systems, Inc. and protected by U.S. copyright laws. Sandler is the worldwide leader in sales, management, and customer service training. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to this one. That would be a good place to start. You can also check out our additional resources at Sandler.com. I'm your host, Mike Montague, Director of Community Engagement at Sandler, and my guest this week is Greg Orth, longtime Sandler trainer from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and we're going to talk with him about how to succeed at reading other people. Greg, welcome to the podcast. Tell me a little bit about reading other people, reading the room, specifically in sales and leadership. What does that mean, and what are we talking about today?
Well, first off, Mike, thanks for having me on the podcast today. I'm glad to be here. So, reading the room, reading other people, it's a very loaded kind of comment/question or initiative, right? But it's when we stop and think about who people buy from. And when I say buy, that could be in the traditional buyer-seller perspective, or it could be an idea, it could be a thought, whatever. But people buy from people they know, like, and trust, right? If you put your own consumer hat on, we buy things from those brands or those people that we're comfortable with, that we're familiar with. So knowing that, it's very critical for us to be able to know who we're talking to. It could be an individual person, right? It could be a group of people. It all depends. But it's important for us to know who we're interacting with, who we're communicating with, and who we're engaging with, because the more that we know who they are, right, then the better that we're going to be able to adapt to kind of how they prefer to communicate, which then makes them, the most comfortable and engaged in the conversation, right? So I can't adapt to somebody, Mike, unless I have at least somewhat of a general idea of maybe who they are, what makes them tick, maybe what's their style, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think this is a really exciting topic for me because typical or traditional salespeople that you think of as like the flashy business card slinging outgoing salesperson don't really have the self-awareness to control their style or to slow down enough to read and adapt to the other person. And so we know as Sandler trainers, we've been doing this for both, almost 10 years, that that's not necessarily what the best salespeople do. The best salespeople have an off button. And so sometimes when people get into sales, they have that misconception that they need to be fast talking. They need to bring and influence other people. But sometimes the best way to do that is to actually slow down, to shut up, listen, and pay attention to what they're doing and read the room, because then you can have a much better, customized conversation and a customized pitch to who you're pitching to. Do any other attitudes or beliefs come to mind when you think about why we should be reading other people?
So absolutely. And this is also a big differentiator between that old school traditional salesperson and the people that we have become and the people that we train our folks to be. Right. And it is a mindset attitude based thing. And it's really understanding that it's not about me. This whole thing, this conversation, whatever it is that we're engaging with, it's not about me. It's about making sure that the other person is getting their needs met. So if you think about that old school traditional salesperson, they're chomping at the bit, they're talking because all they care about is themselves. And so they don't have the self-awareness because all they think about is themselves, as opposed to saying, hey, it's not about me, it's about the other person. And when you have that right mindset and when you have that attitude that it's not about me, it's about them, then you're more apt to think about, okay, what are those things that I can do and observe, right? That makes me focus and concentrate on them and their needs. And that's the biggest thing. It's the mindset of it's not me, it's them.
Now let's transition. This might take us to behavior, but transition to what we're observing, because I think we get that we need to be aware and pay attention to the other people and be a good listener as a salesperson. But sometimes I think salespeople have a wrong misconception about what they're looking for.
Sure.
The old traditional sales stuff again was like commonalities, or, hey, how about the kids? And I see you like the sports team and whatever. And that doesn't necessarily lead us down a business path or necessarily build a connection. It can sometimes when it works, but it can also turn people off who aren't casual conversational people.
Sure.
Right.
Yep. So I always talk about and say that I'm trying to put as many tools in my toolbox as I can about a person or about a situation, right? If I'm talking to you, obviously it's a one-on-one basis. I might be in a room of a bunch of people. And so I've got to then read the room of everyone, not just one person, which makes it a little bit more difficult. But I'm trying to gather as many tools to put in my toolbox before I start to talk or before I start to ask certain questions or whatever it may be. I'm just trying to gather as much information as possible first. To your point, Mike, the old school salesperson see a picture on the wall and be like, oh, you like to golf. I like to golf. Let's talk about golf. Now, I'm not going to say that you can't do that, right? But that is just one tool out of potentially 1,000 that we can observe, because then the more tools we have in the toolbox, the better we are going to be kind of using those tools in our efforts, should we say, right? So it's looking at everything and then building kind of a story, building an image, building a thought, building an understanding of what drives that person or what that person's style might be, so that then, to my point earlier, we're going to be able to adapt. So it's everything, not just the pictures on the wall.
Yeah, and some of this we can do pre-research wise. We could check out their LinkedIn profile or social media, get what their past history was, how they got started with the company or things like that. I think a lot of people miss the chance to do their pre-research to start building that story. But what are some of the other things you look for, either in the room or in the person or their background, that maybe gives you an idea of who they are and what matters to them?
Sure. So those are great tools, by the way. Look at email, for example. How do they send emails? What's in their email? What's in their auto signature? All those kind of things, LinkedIn. So yes, all those are great. So for the focus of now, to your point, is visual observation. We're in the room with them, right? Whether it's in an office, whether it's in a conference room. So I'll be kind of talking on behalf of that kind of perspective there. So let's assume some of that stuff was done. So there are so many things, Mike, that we can observe. And again, it's about building, getting as many tools as we can in our toolbox. We can look at things like, how are they dressed? It's how their physical appearance can actually tell you can give you some indications. There's no be all end all. There's no black and white here. You're trying to kind of build a story or build an image. And you might be wrong, by the way, right? But we're doing the best that we can with the information that we have in front of us to put those tools in there. But how they dress, are they sharply dressed? Are they casual? Are their cuffs rolled up? Are they wearing casual shoes? Are they wearing very classy, formal shoes? So even looking at how they are dressed can give you some indication of what their style may or may not be. Just their physical appearance. Are they smiling a lot? Are they just stone-faced? So those are other things that we can observe. Things such as their tone. Are they a loud talker? Are they in your face and full of emotion? Let's go. Or is it, hey, Mike, how you doing today? It's really good to be here. And are they maybe a quiet talker? The speed at which they talk. Certain styles tend to talk much faster than others. And are they talking? Right?
Mm-hmm.
There are some folks that are more on the reserved side or on the introverted side, and they don't talk very much. And there's nothing wrong with that. But these are things that we need to observe that, again, just help us give us an idea what that person's style might be.
I love that. And I love that you brought in what we're hearing too, because a lot of times people look for stuff, and a lot of people are visual, and that's great. There's some good visual indicators, but on a Zoom call like this, where I have a flat background, you might not be able to see a whole lot. You still mentioned a lot of things you can see, which is, dress, facial expressions,
Sure.
haircuts, or lack thereof, and other things. But I wanted to mention the other senses as well. Like, right, some people have candles lit in the room or interesting lighting. Other people, I was on a call with a lady the other day. It looked like the most comfortable space I've ever seen in my life. Like, everything was fuzzy and warm and
Sure.
bright colors. And I was like, wow, that looks like a really cool place to work in. And that gives you a different vibe than the bookshelf behind them that's loaded with books, so you can tell they read and all that kind of stuff, and the research they have behind them. So I think there is so much we can use to build a profile here. But when you think about behavior too, our goals, plans, and actions, and doing the right thing at the right time, does anything else come to mind here for reading the room?
You actually hit on it there, Mike. And so often we hear the term active listening, right? We hear it all the time. There's hearing, there's listening, and then there's active listening. And active listening is really hearing what is told to you, but then being able to process it and respond accordingly, and not just in one ear and out the other. So we've all heard about active listening, but what I actually talk about, and you brought this up, is I call it active observing, right? Listening is just one of the senses that we have. And so that is very important. And we need to actively listen. But if we take a step back and look bigger picture, it's about actively observing, right? So listening is just one component of it. So are we seeing things? Are we feeling things? Are we smelling things? Right? There might be aromas, there might be a diffuser in the room. But all these things are things that we have to observe. So it's not just listening, it's all the senses that we have, to your point. So I like to call it active observing more than just active listening.
I love that. I think that's really cool. My next question here will transition us to technique. I think, what do we do with this information that we're collecting, and how do we adapt to their style and their preferences? Because I've seen, and we've had other episodes here as well. I can tell everybody listening here to search for DISC, DISC, as a behavioral profile we talk about a lot, where you can kind of adapt to their personalities. But without diving into what all the styles are and how to adapt to each one, maybe we could use a couple of examples or talk generally about what we do, because I feel like sometimes it feels disingenuous as a salesperson, and we're going to try and change our personality, but we also want to meet people where they are, and we adjust naturally to communicate.
Sure.
When we talk different to our parents than we do to our friends or our kids. So tell us a little bit about that. What kind of techniques or what do you do once you've got this profile?
So, again, getting to the profile is the most important. And again, your best guess. Mike, if I've never met you before, I may have only had 30 seconds to a couple minutes to try to observe as much as I can about who you are. And I'm going to have to make a guess, right? I might be close. I might be way off given the senses that I have, but I've got to come to some conclusion as quickly as I possibly can, given the information I have, to say, this is what I think Mike's general style might be. Now, I'm not pigeonholing you into anything. I'm just trying to do the best that I can to understand who you are. So once that's established, and before I go, the other interesting thing you bring up is oftentimes people feel, well, hey, Greg, I'm being fake. And you're absolutely not being fake. We still have to be us. I still have to be Greg Orth. I still have my person. I'm not changing that. All I'm simply doing, because I'm focused on you and your needs, I'm trying to meet you where you're at. All right, Mike, in a perfect world, both of us come halfway, we meet in the middle, right? We know we don't live in a perfect world, right? And in a lot of cases, the other person we may be talking to maybe has no idea or understanding or self-awareness about the need to adapt. But I do. So I might have to go all the way to you to start, right? And I do that. And so from why do we do this? Because if I go to where you're at, Mike, and I communicate in the way that makes you the most comfortable, then if I communicate in that way, then you're going to be comfortable. Your anxiety level is going to go down. Your stress level is going to go down. And you're going to be much more engaged than if I just communicate however I want to and not really care about what you think. So it's about that openness and that engagement and that comfort, because when you're more comfortable, then you're more willing to tell the truth, and we're going to figure out whatever it is we're trying to accomplish together. And that's critical. And guess what? I might be wrong, but as I interact with you more, as I learn more about you, as I observe more things, whether it's in that particular meeting or ongoing, I will then course correct. I'll always say, hey, I was right. Or, I need to pivot a little bit, and I think Mike is a little bit more this or that. Right. But I'm still being me. I'm communicating with you the way that makes you comfortable. And a lot of times you don't even know it's happening, because it's so kind of subconscious. I'm consciously doing it, but it's subconscious to you because you feel comfortable. And I'll give you an example, right? Let's say that, Mike, you're on the more introverted or inward side or reserved side of your style. More introverted folks, they're not loud and boisterous. They're not super talkative a bit and in your face. If I don't recognize that and you're an introverted person, I'd be like, hey, Mike, how's it going? How you doing? Hey, how was your weekend? How are things going? How's business? Tell me more about this. Tell me more about that. So awesome. So let's talk some more. Let's go. Come on. What is that? Traditionally, what would that introverted or reserved person tend to do in that situation?
They're probably going to back up and shut down, right?
They want to run away. And if they can't run away, they're going to shut down. So, and that also creates anxiety, that creates stress, that creates discomfort. Well, that's not doing me any good, knowing that people buy from people they know, like, and trust. I'm doing the exact opposite, right? And on the flip side, if you're super talkative, you're an outward person, and I just sit here and like, Hey, what's up? And don't say anything, then you're like, did I say something wrong? Did I do something wrong? Why is this person not talking to me? Do they not like me? Again, same thing's happening. But if I know you're a reserved or introverted person, then I'm gonna communicate with you in the way that is comfortable for you. I'm not going to be loud. I'm going to slow down a little bit, right? I'm not going to just start digging into certain things. I'm going to make sure that you feel comfortable before we start to kind of move forward with whatever the conversation may be.
I think that's really good. And what I heard in there was what I always kind of keep in mind is, does it lower their anxiety and lower their defensive walls, or are you raising them, right? If somebody's moving fast, they're in a hurry, they got a busy day, and you're taking your time, you're adding to their anxiety.
Sure.
If they're slow and you're moving too fast, you're adding to their anxiety. So I think when we match people where we are, we're really just slowing down and lowering those stress levels for them. And it might not be their personality too. I love what you said about not stereotyping or putting somebody in this box forever, that even outgoing, friendly people have bad days, or they might just be tired today and be like, man, I don't have it. I need you to slow down for me. I'm not thinking straight. I'm distracted by 12 other things at home or work. And they might be in a different place. So when we really get good at reading the room, we're reading each individual situation. And maybe they want to start fast at the beginning of the meeting and then slow down later when it gets to the details, or the opposite. Sure. I think that's what's so tricky about this, is it's not true forever, per se.
Right. And like I said before, Mike, there's no black, white, right and wrong. There's no correlation of if this, then that. Right. It's a generalization, it's a judgment, but it's the things that we have to understand. But also to that point, if we have a natural style to us, right? Of what's comfortable to us. We don't think about it. We just do it, right? We exhibit those characteristics. Well, many people have a couple different natural styles. So which one do I see first? And in a meeting, there may be a certain sense of prim and properness that I'm trying to exhibit, and I'm trying to talk more, even though I naturally don't. Those are things that we have to start to pick up on. And at the end of the day, we exhibit all styles. Right. So even though, let's say that I'm more of an extroverted outward person, I still exhibit introverted, reserved inward characteristics as well. It just depends on the situation. We do all four of them. That's why you can't pigeonhole somebody, because we can do them all. We can do them all perfectly. It's just one takes some energy, and the other ones are more natural.
So I want to end with a fun question. I know you've been kind of playing a game and doing some research on reading the room yourself for the last 10 years. Can you give us an example of some of the things that you look for and how you adapt to the styles?
So a couple of things. I'm going to give you two. I'm going to give you a real quick one on the first one. I'll dive a little bit deeper in the second one. The first one is your socks. Right? If you look at what the kind of socks that a person wears, that tells you a lot. Now, sometimes women don't wear socks. They might have, nylons or something on. But if somebody's wearing socks, it's interesting to see what their socks tell them. Some people don't wear socks. That's more of a casual, kind of laid back, I kind of don't care look. Some have the traditional blue socks or black socks. Others, like myself, I wear the funky socks. I wear socks that have my dog on it, or I wear socks with Santa Claus on it, or bacon on it, or tacos on it. So those are fun little things. Just observe. Now, people that are listening to this are like, oh, I'm going to check out everybody's socks now. But socks tell you a lot. The other one that I've had a lot of fun with, Mike, is understanding a person's preferred writing instrument. So when I first meet with a new client or have a new group of new training group, a question I ask is, what's your preferred writing instrument? We'll do intros. What's your name? What do you do? Blah, blah, blah. And the question I'll ask is, what's your preferred writing instrument? And sometimes I get the little squirrel eye, like, why are you asking me that? And I kind of get my, there's a reason for the madness. I'll tell you a little bit later. But Mike, I tell you, it is uncanny how your preferred writing instrument tells a lot about your behavioral style. And at some point in time down the road, I'm going to write a book about this. But for right now, this is all very unofficial data. So, for example, let's say that you're that in the DISC world, we call it D, right? But it is a task-oriented person, extroverted, very much about big picture, about the results, kind of competitive type person. If I ask a D that type of question, what's your preferred writing instrument? Without a doubt, there's a couple things that always come forward. The color is typically black, because it's a very bold, you can see that it's black. I'll often get answers such as, hey, I like my preferred writing instrument is a Sharpie, because it's thick, it's bold, it's there, you can see it. Or I might get oftentimes a higher end branded pen like a Mont Blanc or something that's got their name on it, or it's shiny, or it's expensive, whatever it may be. Those are kind of the common things I'll hear from that type of person. And I'll give you another example of so the S type person. That is a people oriented but reserved type person, very much about kind of kumbaya, status quo, level, even keel. Let's just kind of keep things the way they are, harmony, all that kind of good stuff. Um, they will often tell you that they love a gel pen, or they'll, instead of describing the pen, they'll say, I just want a pen that writes well. I want a pen that writes smoothly, because it's more about the feel than it is about the output or the style or the brand. Is how that pen feels in their hand and how it writes on a piece of paper. Now, the interesting thing about that person as well is they might say, hey, I like this pen, this tool pen, or a Pilot G2. They will be very specific because they buy them in packs of 1,000, because it's comfortable. I know it works well. Why would I want to change and get a different pen than the one that I have? And again, I buy them in bulks of 1,000, so I will never run out, and I'll never have to use a different pen ever again. And and they're all, most of the time their color is blue. So I'm not going to go through all the other styles, but it's just so very interesting how your preferred writing instrument tells a lot about some of your dominant or styles of who you are.
Yeah, that's so funny. I am exactly in that. I have the blue, squishy grip pens, and I definitely buy them by at least 100 so that I can always grab another one if it starts not writing well, or I don't have to worry about changing it, because I hate when the colors don't match and stuff, or I start at
Sure.
one note in one color and then I get a different pen somewhere else, or I don't have a pen like that. That's
There you go.
the stress and anxiety for me. But I know also with the playful style. So I have crazy scribble handwriting, and I have spelling issues, so I don't like writing on boards and things for other people. And so my preferred writing style is usually in an email or something, because I like to be able to proofread it or get it
Sure.
right, or add, special characters and things, which I think is interesting too.
Well, yeah, I mean, to that playful style, that kind of that social butterfly type style, that people person, extroverted. What I'll hear, similar to what you said there, Mike, is a lot of times they'll say, I prefer a keyboard. To your point, like an email. I'm like, interesting. Why do you prefer a keyboard? Well, my handwriting is really sloppy, and I don't want people to see my sloppy handwriting, because if they see my sloppy handwriting, they may not like me, or they might think something's wrong with me. So I don't want that to happen. So I prefer to type it. And so it's just really interesting the different dynamics that people have for their writing instrument. Or that person might say, I don't care. I'll take whatever pen I can get out of my wife's purse, or off my husband's desk, or I get whatever I get from the bank, or from the billfold at the restaurant. Whatever pen, I don't care. Just give me a pen. And
Yeah.
so it's just
I think
fun
that's
to really
awesome.
see that.
Well, I would like to get to know you a little bit better. So I feel like I don't know if you shared what's your preferred writing instrument.
So my preferred writing instrument is a tool pen. You get this at Office Max. It's their brand. It's a needle point. But I have a unique disc or behavioral style where I have a high, as they say in the disc world, ISC. So I'm both the social butterfly extrovert people person, but I also have the level of comfort in S, but I also have a high level of detail of C. So this kind of hits all of them for me. But that's my preferred writing instrument.
Yeah, I have all three above the line too, but feel like the C's dropping off these days. Which I forgot, by the way, on my seat to reintroduce you. We're talking with Greg Orth, Sandler trainer from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And you've been involved with Sandler for like 9 years now. So I'm wondering, at this point in your career, how do you define success?
That's a loaded question, because I think success is it's really to the individual. I base my success on happiness, simply put. I worked in the corporate world, as a lot of folks in the Sandler network have done. I worked in the corporate world for 25 years, and I played the corporate game, but I'm not a corporate person. And so I was always doing things for other people, and I finally said, I'm doing it for me. And so the last couple of years in the corporate world, I was miserable, just downright miserable. But when I got into this business, things changed, and my happiness factor went up 100x. And so how do I rate success? And that's just the happiness that I have, and the happiness that I can provide to my family, and how we are able to just still work and be successful, but have some fun along the way.
And what was the biggest lesson learned or hurdle you had to get over in your career in order to be successful?
Jump and the net will appear. Stop getting ready to get ready. So my S side of things, that cautious, not liking change a whole lot, kept me in the corporate world longer than I maybe wanted to, right? So my biggest lesson learned is, you know what, life's about choices. Just jump and the net will appear. Things will work out. It's okay to push yourself and get out of your comfort zone, because there's some great stuff on the other side.
That's awesome. And I think you're the second person that's told that to me in the last week. So it might be time for me to jump on something. Do you have a favorite Sandler rule, quote, or motto you like to live by?
I do have a favorite. I mean, I love the Sandler rules, but I'm definitely a big quote guy. I use quotes all the time in our training classes and whatnot. But one of my favorite quotes, it's like saying, what's your favorite child? I can't just pick one, but I'll give you one of the top ones that I have. It's from John Wooden, and that's, you can't live a perfect day without doing something for someone who will never be able to repay you.
Ooh, that's a good one. All right, we'll let that simmer here a little bit, and we'll wrap things up for everybody. Feel free to repeat yourself. 3 quick ones, hit our takeaways based on how to succeed at reading other people. What is one attitude you'd like people to have?
The attitude is not about you. Always make sure that your attitude is about the other person and getting their needs met. When their needs are met, then ours will come on the backside.
And one behavior or thing you would like people to do?
The behavior is just make this part of your routine. Make this part of a pre-call plan, like you mentioned earlier, doing some of your research. There are things that you can do and research that gives you an idea about somebody's style before you even talk to them, before you ever see them. Look at LinkedIn, look at maybe some of their emails, but just make it part of your plan.
And the best technique, tool, or hack to use?
Look at their pen, look at their socks, but more importantly, just actively observe. Do more than just active listening, actively observe everything that you can see, hear, touch, smell.
Greg, thanks for being on the show. Again, for more information on Sandler, you can get any of our free resources at sandler.com, or find a local training center or reach out to our enterprise team to get some help with it yourself. As always, you can subscribe to this podcast or send it to somebody that you think needs to hear it. Thank you for listening. And remember, whatever you are, be a good one. The How to Succeed podcast is brought to you by Sandler, the worldwide leader in sales, management, and customer service training with over 200 locations. For more information, visit sandler.com.
The Sandler Summit returns in